You're listening to the Make Mental Podcast.
What's up, Make Mental listeners? I'm Alyssa Herman, former athlete and founder of Beyond the Athlete. If you are a former athlete too, then you know the hardest part of retiring isn't leaving behind your sport, it's losing your teammates. This is why I created The Locker Room, an online community where former athletes rebuild structure, purpose, and healthy competition, all alongside a new team who truly understands them. Make Mental listeners can join free for 30 days. Just use code MakeMental at the link below to request your spot on the roster.
You know, one thing I've learned while running Make Mental is that the conversations are the easy part. It's creating content and getting it out there that takes the most time and energy. That's why I started working with C3 Socials, and honestly, they have been a lifesaver. They've been running my Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for the past few months, and in just the last 90 days, over 350,000 people have visited my Instagram alone. But the numbers aren't even the best part. It is the time and energy that I've gotten back. Chandler, the owner, is super personable and always available. Seriously, it's crazy how hands-on she is. So if you're trying to grow your brand or just free up some headspace while getting results, check out C3 Socials. Tell them Make Mental sent you because they've helped me tremendously, and I cannot recommend them enough. Hello again, beautiful people, and welcome back to another guest episode here on the Make Mental Podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Caleb Munski, and today I am super excited to bring you this guest. Today we have Sam Whiteman. She was a former guard from Covington, Ohio, who started at Trevecca before finishing her college career at Thomas More University, where she was part of a Saints team that made a national tournament run. And since stepping away from basketball, Sam has turned her competitive drive into entrepreneurship and coaching. She is the co-founder of Arena Transfer, a company that helps former athletes rebuild their purpose into career after sport. And she speaks about faith, coaches, finances, fitness, and performance. So Sam, we are super excited to pick your brain and on this time on the podcast, and we're thankful that you joined us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I love what you guys are doing. So it's a pleasure.
Yeah, let's set the stage. Take me back to some of your early athletic days. What did that look like for you? Was basketball always your sport, or were you kind of jumping around?
Yeah, great question. Basketball was always my sport. I tried stuff early on. Once I got to my freshman year of high school, I tried volleyball. I gave it a shot. Was like, you know what, this isn't for me. I want to pursue my dreams of going to college for basketball. It's where my true passion was. So I went all in after my sophomore year and on, and it was always basketball.
Yeah, where does that come from? How did you just kind of, I mean, you said you tried a few different sports here and there, but did you just fell in love with it, or it was just something you have just an innate drive in you and basketball happened to be the thing that you clung to?
Yeah, so my grandpa was not a small human being. He was about 6'5", solid 200 pounds. So he instilled basketball in me very early. His nephew is actually John Paxson, so we kind of come from a basketball family. So naturally, that's just what I wanted to pursue. I wanted to be just like them. So I was around the game all the time growing up, and then the reason I really pivoted to only focusing on basketball is one of my mentors at the time kind of, told me obsession is your superpower. That's your biggest strength. Like, you have to be obsessed about becoming great in one area if you really want to. So for me, that concept started in basketball. I mean, I've kind of even carried that into life now, but I would say that's why I pivoted into purely just doing basketball.
Yeah, obsession is your superpower. Walk me through that.
Yeah. So, I'll kind of relate this more to my life now just because it's easier to digest. But when I got into life after sport, my Achilles heel was I tried to do everything and be great at it. Therefore, I was very, very mediocre at best at everything that I was trying to accomplish at the time. And I realized, when I just had one goal, one focus, one thing to lock in and drive myself toward, I was able to excel very, very quickly. Right. So for me, just being obsessed with the process, Kobe Bryant talked about it all the time. That's the truly only way to be, incredibly great at something, because the amount of time, effort, mental and physical fortitude it takes to be great.
Yeah, and that's exhausting. And within obsession, I can't just drop that's exhausting, or we'll come back to it. But within obsession, two key words come to mind for me, or key factors: motivation and discipline. Which one jumps out to you more? And I guess why is one that not jump out to you kind of just hang there?
Yeah, that is a great question. I would say that discipline sticks out to me more because, you're not always going to be motivated. You have to be very, very good at doing, what your standard is every day. So I would say discipline jumps out to me because in order, to have true success, it's not how many big leaps can you take every single day. It's how many small steps can you take forward, even through burnout, even when you are on the mountain, right? So discipline sticks out to me. The reason motivation kind of hangs there, although I do think it is important, is I mean, like I said, realistically, if you're not disciplined and you don't actually take action, motivation doesn't mean anything really.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer. And I guess I'll jump back to exhaustion here because it kind of goes along with discipline. I guess it can get exhausting. So can obsession. And honestly, so can motivation if all you are is motivated and never take action. So I appreciate the choice of discipline. Um, what if we are just extremely obsessed, extremely disciplined, but we don't understand the lifestyle that comes with it? Because you can look at someone and want what they have or work for what they have, but not really understand the journey. Can you speak on that and when you face a little bit of that exhaustion? Because you and I both know as high achievers, sometimes you're just purely burnt out. How do you battle that exhaustion?
Great question. In terms of how I battle exhaustion, I think it really is important to listen to your body's cues. As athletes, you want to, persist through every single thing, no matter what. You feel like you have to, or you're a failure. I actually find that, the healthiest thing that I do when I am feeling that exhaustion or that burnout is truly taking time to fill my cups in other areas of my life, right? Because if we're talking purely just work, whether it be, actually your sport or whether it be, business or life after, that's only one thing, right? You've got a family, you've got friends, you've got your faith, you've got your finance, whatever it might be. There's so many other areas of your life that need attention. So for me, I find that when I actually pour time into those other buckets, that's how I really allow myself to get back into the groove of, discipline and getting through that burnout phase.
Yeah, I love it. And you mentioned a bunch of other things like faith and friends and family. Well, I guess what do you do specifically instead of just touching on those ones? Like when it's Sam is just so exhausted, doesn't matter what day of the week, you're just so burnt out. You're like, I can't take another step forward. I need to recharge. What's the go to?
Yeah, I would say that the first couple things that always come to mind for me are number one, just my faith, like literally just being present in any way that is. Maybe it's listening to music in the car, it's getting into the word, talking to, another believer. That's always my go to. That really allows me to just slow down. When it comes to faith, something that I think is really important to realize is everything worldly is performance based and we always base our worth on that. But if you're a faith driven individual, like that is a place where you just get to be. Like
Mm.
you truly just get to be and have ultimate peace. So I just come back to, being present and then other things that I'll do just for fun. So self-care. I'm a girl. I'm gonna go get my nails done or something like that. I might go shopping. Or I might, go get dinner with my friends, family, things like that. So try to get off the phone, just be as present as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I've heard you speak on the five F's before. Is that
Yep.
true? So you have faith, you have family, self-care would be fun. What are the other two?
Yeah. So it's faith, family, finance, fitness, and fun. So those are kind of the five buckets that I feel like realistically makes up your life in all regards. So I just again try to fill those buckets and audit myself there as much as possible.
Yeah, and I guess self-care could fall into a handful of those buckets, but I couldn't help but focus on faith a little bit as someone who is also faith-driven, admittedly, sometimes more than others. Um, I'm sure you're familiar with Jay Shetty, correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I'd hope if you're listening to my podcast, you're familiar with Jay Shetty, but if you're not, I encourage you to check him out and his podcast. But he talks a lot about the three space theory, and it suggests that humans once had three distinct spaces or spheres for life. They had home, they had work, and then they had this third space, which could be that faith, that community center, temple, or really just a place for reflection and personal growth. And over time, this third space, I agree with him when he says that it's been lost with the added pressures, obviously, of the pandemic. Many of us find ourselves in a single space. I mean, I'm sitting recording my podcast in the room that I just worked in for 8 hours before this. And then right next door, I just closed the door and put my dog in the bedroom. So I'm literally 10 steps away from every single thing I need in life. Um, this can lead you to lacking the necessary vantage point for introspection. But before we get there, do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think the three space theory is something that's legitimate, or it's something that we've kind of just fell into?
Yeah, I think it's legitimate. I think, all three are extremely important. And I would say that I agree with him in saying that we've kind of lost that. I would also say, though, I feel like our generation is tired of that and we're starting to bring it back. We've seen that, recently with what's happening with our government and, life things that have been happening just in the world. I see a lot more people coming together. I feel like Ohio State really showed that last year, just by leading on campus and their faith and things like that. So I kind of sense a revival coming. One of my friends, I don't know if any of you guys have heard of RWC Run with Christ, but it's originated in Ohio. It's now a run club called Run with Christ, and it's literally all over the country. It's actually all over the world now. So I think it's just cool to see, people doing things like that just to pick up on community and getting around other people, because it's lonely without that. I'm somebody that's, I'm an extrovert, introvert. I'm definitely both. But when I'll have times like you where I realize I just sat in the same room for a week and my mood will be so low. My energy, my frequency is so low. The second I'm around people, it just elevates, to a whole different level. So I think that's very real. And, I think it's something we need to be intentional about bringing that community thing back to life.
Yeah, I love to see faith-driven communities grow. Specifically those for me, but obviously any community where you're trying to better yourself grow, I'm all for. So we're happy for Run with Christ, and I'm gonna have to check it out because honestly I've never heard of it, so I'm gonna have to check it out now. I encourage my listeners to do the same if they're so inclined. But I think community is huge, but also just that change of scenery. Because if I have to take my dog for a walk, I know I mentioned her earlier, just getting outside for 5 minutes, even if I have my phone and my music in, sometimes I like to go without it, but just that time away from the spot you're used to with yourself allows for moments of introspection, like I said, self-examination, and just evaluation. You were talking about the need for communities. I mentioned in the beginning that you transferred from one collegiate basketball program to another. What adversity did you face there in leaving what I assume was an established community of friends to join another?
Yeah, great question. I did face adversity. One thing I'll preface that by saying is it's the best thing that ever happened to me, to be completely transparent with you. In terms of switching, from program to program, that was super unique because I went from, having a super important major role at a losing program to not having as important of a role, but now I'm on a national championship team. So that was very different. My first school, I had a very developed friend group. We were all super close. The easiest part about that was I wasn't the only one that transferred, so I didn't have that FOMO feeling. We all kind of decided to leave that year and go our separate ways, which made it easier for me. But when I transferred to Thomas More, I truly came into a team, everybody was super welcoming. My birthday was the day I moved in and they threw a party for me and they didn't even know me. So I actually had a great experience with moving. The adversity of switching program to program was a different story, but I had a great friend group at both places. So I really can't complain too much about that.
Yeah, tell us that different story. What was the adversity coming from, like you said, big fish in small pond to small fish in big pond?
Yeah, it was a big reality check of how good I was. I also, just a little bit of my story. I'm very, open book about it. When I was in high school, I didn't do anything. When I got to college, I got a little wrapped up in, partying, having fun, things like that. Gained a ton of weight, just was super unhealthy. So I really thought I was her when I was at the first school. I'm starting, I'm doing everything as a freshman. I'm getting conference accolades as a freshman, sophomore. I then transfer my junior year thinking, oh, I'm going from playing D2 to NAIA. Like I don't even need to try hard to be in a good spot. Well, I was coming into a team of nothing but other D1 and D2 transfers, and I wasn't at all who I thought I was. So it was a rude awakening. I actually didn't handle it very well at first. It took me on an even deeper spiral until we
Mm,
won the national championship. And I had this come to Jesus moment again where I was like, wow, I've like wrapped myself up so much in this performance, like wrapping up my worth in performance that I've totally missed the message the whole time. My coach didn't like me. I was hanging out with the wrong crowd, all the things. So after the national championship game, I got home in my room. First time in years, I'd actually got on my knees and prayed. And I was just like,
mm.
God, if you show me my purpose again, I'll commit like all my ways to you. And the next day, I was on the phone call with two of my now, greatest mentors, and he literally changed my life overnight. So that's just a little snippet of my story. But yeah, I'm super grateful to have gone through that adversity. It humbled me. It made me, realize you don't just get to be somebody because you decide. You actually have to work for it, right? So it was a good experience.
Yeah, I appreciate you for opening up, sharing a little bit more of your story. A guest that we just recently had on, Michael Gross, he went through a similar experience, not necessarily in the athletics world, although he might have. He just didn't share that. He is a Emmy nominated sports anchor in a small town in Indiana. He was the big fish in the little pond. I mean, he went to Syracuse University, you name it. He did everything correct, everything you were supposed to. Then he stepped back and went to Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is a bigger area, especially if you're working around professional sports. And he said he struggled with confidence and cockiness. Is that something you can relate to, or was it more of just like the ego check smacked you in the face?
I would say that it was the ego thing slapped me in the face. I definitely had a false confidence. I guess I just based that off the fact that I started.
Hmm.
It was just an ego slap. I think it was like, oh, like coach doesn't like me. Everybody likes me. Oh, I'm not starting. I've always started, So I think more than anything for me, it was more of an ego slap. I've never necessarily been someone who was like super cocky. I'm pretty reserved in that regard, but internally,
Mm.
I'll play that game of like, okay, if you're going to be like that to me, then I'll be like this to you. So it was more one of those things.
Yeah, interesting. I love a different perspective there. You talked a lot about how you realize that you can be good but not get anywhere without a lot of hard work. And again, that ties into the obsession theme, the discipline theme, the overcoming theme, the egos, like all of it comes with hard work, right? Because you worked hard to get to that program. You were good enough to get on that program, but then again, it's like, okay, you got there, but now what? And obviously you turn to faith, but do you think that fall from grace is necessary for everyone in order to figure out their higher purpose in life, or do you think it was just part of your story and you can skip that step of the journey?
I don't necessarily feel like I don't think anybody needs to go through the same exact thing, but I do feel like it's important to have some sort of like slap in the face to kind of wake you up to what that reality is. Now that's going to come in many shapes and forms. Some are going to be more aggressive because people are going down a very bad path or they are going very far away from their purpose. Other
Mm.
people it might be, small nudges here and there, but I do think it is important to go through something to have a bigger awakening to, figuring out what you were really put on earth to do.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because a lot of times, even the guests we have on here have this big moment, right? This, what I call the catalyst for change. Some people call it the coming of age, whatever you refer to it as. That moment it doesn't look the same, number one, for every guest. Yes, they sound similar because we primarily focus on athletes or former athletes. However, it could be something much more simple. And by simple, I don't mean any less significant or any less complicated for you, but it doesn't have to be this big move from one school to another, lose your spot, feel like you didn't really contribute to the national championship, blah, blah, blah. It could just be like, hey, I am stuck. I don't know what I want to do, or whatever it looks like for you. So if you're listening to this thinking like, man, I don't have this big moment, number one, who's to say you still won't? Although I hope you don't have a huge moment as someone who's had moments themselves. And number two, maybe you have had your moment and you're just comparing. You're playing that comparison game. Is that something you still do? Do you still compare to other people, or are you so connected to yourself at this moment in time where you're just, again, obsessed and disciplined enough to solely focus on you?
Yeah, I would say kind of back to one thing that you just said in terms of, having that moment. I think a lot of times your moment comes from taking action towards something, right?
Mm.
And naturally, life is never going to be a straight line up. You are going to have pitfalls, and those are your moments, right? Like I said, it's either small nudges or maybe it is something really, drastic that happens. But In terms of comparing, I think our flesh is always pretty guilty of that in some capacity. It's hard to completely diminish that, especially with social media and everything. So I would say I definitely can fall into that comparison game, especially in business, but I'm very good at coming back to, being rooted in the Lord, which grounds me in everything, because I know as long as I am working in God's will for my life and I'm following the visions he's giving me, then and I know I'm doing what I need to do, right?
Mm.
The biggest differentiator I notice, like I said, is people, you might get that vision, you might feel that purpose, and you're just constantly thinking about it. I I kind of judge myself based on, okay, am I thinking and taking consistent action? Then what do I have to compare myself to? So as long as
Mm.
I'm moving, I'm typically pretty okay with that.
Yeah, and then ironically, in the theme of comparison, I'm going to compare the comparison culture to the game of golf. I don't know why. Maybe you could say I'm obsessed with golf. My girlfriend probably thinks I am, but that's a whole different story. Too much time on the golf course. I'm not as good as I want to be, so it takes me like 4 hours to get through, but I won't go
Right.
off on a tangent. But golf, you're obviously competing against others. There's no way. Comparison, competition, they kind of have a ring to them, but you're competing with yourself in the truest form, right? Like there's no competitor standing in front of you trying to block your swing. You have natural obstacles, but it's really you, the club, the ball, and the course. Is it possible to look at life that way, or are we too complicated of a culture, do you think, to where it can just be, I'm Sam, I'm trying to accomplish this in life. Yes, there are people trying to accomplish the same thing, but it's really up to me at the end of the day.
I think that it is possible, potentially. You'd have to do so much internal work, I feel,
Mm.
to never compare yourself to others. I feel like you couldn't have social media. I think if you have a way to be, if you're constantly around people, you're around community, you're on social media, it's nearly impossible for your flesh to not compare in some capacity. Now, I know people who are really good at separating the two. I know people who can, again, just completely rely on their faith and separate, okay, this is me. I'm completely separated from the outcome or what other people are doing. So, my honest answer would be I do think it's impossible to never compare yourself ever, but I think you can get pretty close to being solely focused on your journey.
Are you close?
Not as close as I want to be, but I'm closer than I used to be.
Not as close as you want to be, like closest, like to that absolute impossible thing to achieve of
Yeah.
non-comparison. Huh.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, where I kind of for me, like I said, I've kind of mentioned it a couple times. It typically comes back to social media, especially in the business world and sales. You're constantly seeing other people's metrics, so naturally, it's easy to be like, "Oh, how have they made this much and I haven't?" Or how do they have an organization doing this and I'm not? That's where I can get kind of caught in a comparison game. But I also wouldn't say that for me, it's super unhealthy. I don't look at it and get mad or think about it negatively. To me, it's more of a motivator like,
Hmm.
okay, congrats to them. I'm genuinely so proud of that person. Now, how can I learn from them or what can I do to get closer to where they're at? So I think if you view it from a lens of somebody else did it, so why can't I? It's much, much healthier, just like, the 4 minute mile, things like that. So yeah, I think that's the frame I take, which for me is really good. But, if I could get, solely focused on myself, my journey, and not think about that at all, that'd also be great.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the honesty, and I think that your statement, you're closer than you were, but not as close as you want to be, rings true with a lot of our listeners. I know it rings true to me. There are days where I am so self-aware, so on top of it. I can understand that X, Y, and Z does this with I will just use the podcast, with their podcasts. Awesome. Like, this is fantastic. How did they do that? Number one, I'm a big, big proponent of the how and why. And then number two, why not me? Right? Like, if they did, why not me? And again, your story is unique, but I feel so many similarities in the sense where I used to know that I was good at my sport, and then I got older, my body stopped cooperating, and I got frustrated, and all this happened, and I used to compare and be like, oh, well, there's other people that are 23, 24 playing professional. Like, I say, why not me? But actually, why not me? And go down that spiral. You, on the other hand, obviously, you had that, we call it the ego slap moment. I feel like there's got to be something better to call that. We'll think on that. But you had that moment of realization. I'm sure you did play the comparison game a lot then. I could be out there. I could be contributing. I used to contribute. Now it's, oh, okay, I can get there. However, I'm happy that someone's succeeding and everyone's just not failing. Can we exist there for a little bit? When others succeed at a faster rate than we do, what can we do so we don't feel like we're so far behind number one, but then number two, feel like we're not working 24 hours a day so we can never accomplish any of the 5 F's that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, that's good. I would say, number one, have you ever heard of the book 10x is easier than 2x?
I've heard it, but I've never dabbled with it, no.
Okay, so from a more tangible perspective, that entire concept is it is actually easier to 10x whatever you want to 10x than it is a 2x. Because if I say, okay, Caleb, right now, how would you 2x make mental? You'd probably say, I would just do exactly what I'm doing, but twice as hard. But if I ask you, how are you going to 10x, in the next year, you're probably going to think totally different. Oh, I'm going to run ads. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have to, bring on better guests, things like that. Right. So I kind of carry that concept in the comparison game, or not even in the comparison game, just the, getting there at an efficient rate. I just try to think, how can I think bigger? How can I be more efficient? That's probably how those people won in the first place. I also think you have to constantly remind yourself everything that looks like an overnight success is undoubtedly not an overnight success, right? They have put in so much work on the back end. It's just that realization of, okay, what do I need to do to completely, maintain the skill set that the people at the level I want to get to have? So when I'm, looking at other people or maybe comparing, my ultimate mindset is number one, like, what can I learn? Who is a mentor in the space that has what I have? And how can I ground myself and be grateful for where I am and reflect back on how far that I have come? Because we can get so wrapped up in looking at what we want or where we want to go that we forget to reflect back on the past 6 months or the past year and realize, wow, like I'm actually doing everything that I wanted to back then. I just keep setting the glass ceiling higher so it doesn't feel that way, right?
Yeah, let me get this straight. You're not saying to not work at all, as in 2x, not put in hard work. You're just saying think differently about the hard work that you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Everybody, we overcomplicate things. Where our mind, we are naturally from the time that we start school, we are taught how to like follow a system that already exists and work really hard. We are not naturally taught how to think. Thinking is actually harder for us than working. It's much easier for you to tell me, hey, go grab a shovel. I want you to go dig that hole. I'll dig all day because I know what to do. But if you tell me to sit down by myself and just reflect and think super clearly about the best possible way to, solve this solution, it's a lot harder for us, right? So I think that's, kind of the main point of that concept.
Yeah, makes total sense, and I might have to look into that because that's super fascinating to me. But let's shift a little bit to you after sport. I know we're we're pretty much there. What do you do now? You wake up on a weekday and you head to work. What does that look like now that basketball's out of the equation?
Yeah, so I run an insurance brokerage now, which has been absolutely incredible. I think, pivoting from being an athlete to being in business or being a sales leader is one of the easiest transitions. So, something that I did right outside of, playing college basketball is I started my business, which is called Arena Transfer, essentially transferring from the arena of sport into the arena of business and entrepreneurship. So, that's, kind of my whole mission is insurance is the vehicle. The financial space is the highest paying industry in the world consistently, always has been. So what better way to, take an athlete who's freshly out of sport, help them find their identity without that, and then teach them how to transition that skill set into actually, building and scaling their own business. So my day to day is not just, personally selling and helping families out with insurance, but it's how can I give these transitioning athletes purpose in that new arena.
Yeah, was this a personal mission to you, or is this somewhere you just saw an opportunity and it kind of fell into your lap?
Super personal. I think it is so important to find your identity outside of sport and not get wrapped up into it. So that's where it all stemmed for me. Naturally, business and entrepreneurship has always been a passion of mine. That's not where Arena Transfer started. It did just start as like, who am I without my sport? But I realized business as my new sport and I absolutely love it. So that part has been, newer for me. But yeah, it's definitely a personal mission.
Yeah, again, I think a lot of times the best businesses come from something personal when your reason why is deeply rooted within you, but it also can help so many others. I always like the phrase, even priests get paid. at the end of the day. They get a place to live or they get some sort of compensation, right? Like they are doing the Lord's work, but they get something in return, which you just have to simply to live. It's just the way it goes. But obviously they have a really strong reason why. What are some of the mistakes you found early in your business career? Obviously still early in your career, but I'm talking about like ground level, day one, arena transfer is a baby, and what now?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest things that I failed in is I didn't understand how important your target audience is and fully understanding the demographic of who you're trying to help. For example, targeting transitioning athletes or athletes that were maybe pros, didn't quite make it, et cetera, et cetera. I was trying to offer a service that wasn't affordable for them because if you look at most athletes, they don't have much money coming outside of sport. They're starting their life, right? So I was getting frustrated. Like, how do I monetize this business? Because I see the vision for it. That's when my mindset shifted to let me not charge them something. Let me give them a platform to actually build the income they're now looking for. So I would say the biggest realization I've had in business has been just really, really understanding who my target audience is, what they need, and what is kind of in that price range, what makes sense for them, right? So I would say that's definitely number one. Number two is also just not feeling like you constantly have to bootstrap everything by yourself, but being smarter about using the connections you have because those people they already know, they're already great at something. You don't have to be everything, right? So another thing that I've gotten much, much better at is just delegation in general. Lastly, a business is not a business without systems. You have to have systems in place if you want to be successful, or else you're pretty much winging everything.
Yeah, 3 fantastic points. And I'm going to skip over number 1, not because it's not important, but because I think it's self-explanatory and you explained it wonderfully. Number 2, relying on your network. Sometimes that can feel like you're annoying. Sometimes that can feel like you're needy. Sometimes that can feel like the only time you reach out to someone is when you want something. Is that inevitable, or is that something we can do? Can we build relationships and rely on our network without only asking for something?
You have to get incredible about almost asking for everything in a way where they see it as a no-brainer value add to them, right? Which can be really difficult. It's almost like the art of selling. If I, know that I need to be in someone's mentorship program because it's going to teach me a skill I don't have. Well, I can find a way to uniquely say, hey, like I really, want to be a part of what you're doing. Since you've already added so much value to me, Kayla, by your social media and what you've helped me build, the least that I could do is honestly just offer, a free value webinar and just share my knowledge in finance because I do run a multiple 6-figure agency. Since you've added so much value to me, I would love to give you this free value back. Like, it's just finding unique ways to show them value in return. I think that's a great way to do it. You also have to remember that people who are very successful actually love to feed you, give you information, tell you what they know. What frustrates them is when you take it and then you do absolutely nothing with it. But if my mentor tells me what to do, I apply it and then I come back to them and I say, I applied exactly what you told me and it did X, Y, Z. They're probably going to give you the steps to follow, and you're just going to build that relationship with them. So kind of a long answer, but that's what I would say to that.
So ask and then act, not just ask.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Now you got me thinking how many people I've just asked and not acted or answered. I guess there's 3 A's right there. Ask, act, answer. And then ask again if your answer is still not clear. Because like you said, there comes a point that I hope to get to where you're not worried about when the next paycheck comes in. And you're worried about giving back in more ways than just money. And if you can find that mentor, every successful person that I've met has one or had one, and they want to be one for somebody. So you are so correct. There's always someone out there in the seat that you want to be that is willing to one day help you get there. They're not going to give it up. They're not just going to hand it out. They're going to teach you and you're going to have to work for it. But if someone wanted to do what you're doing, what is step number 1?
Step number 1, plain and simple, is you do have to get licensed. It's like a 10, 14-day process. But realistically, working with us, I try to take a very hands-on approach, especially with athletes. So step number 1 is really just, meeting with me. That way I can get a good feel to make sure, you fit our culture and what we want to do. For that person, it's making sure we're a good fit, right? And the industry in general, I think it's just identifying if you want to be in business and sales, plain and simple. Getting licensed, and then it's, plug and play. If you're in the right industry or you're with the right team in this industry, I meant to say, there's systems, there's scripts. You just have to apply yourself, just like anything. That's where sports comes in. You can't get great at basketball without ever taking a shot. Can't get great at ball handling if you never dribble the basketball, right? So to me, I think the best way to get started and win in business and sales is to just throw yourself in the fire and get through those failures as quickly as possible, because you're going to have. So licensing, throw yourself in the fire, start building and scaling with the knowledge that you've gained.
Yeah, and I always love a good reference back to sports, hence my golf reference earlier. And I think we forget that sometimes the skills we have in athletics transfer over. I mean, it's in the name of your business, arena transfer. They literally can come over. In the shift, you do miss more free throws than you make. You do swing and miss the baseball, the softball more times. You miss the block, whatever sport you're playing. You don't get your PR. That doesn't stop you from not trying again. Why is it so difficult, do you think, for athletes to get beyond that mental block when their sport's done?
Yeah, just like that identity shift of, I think it is so hard because as athletes, we are naturally performance based. And when you're not playing, you essentially feel like you're losing or you're failing simply because you're not playing the game anymore. So your question was, why do I feel like it's hard to get over that, right?
Yeah, why is it that we're able to do it in sports, we're able to miss a shot and run back out there? Why are we afraid to do that in business, in life?
Okay. Yeah, I think honestly, because it's a very gray area where sports isn't. Sports is very black and white. Life is very gray. I know that even if I, miss a shot, my team can still win the game. I know if we lose a game, we can still win a national championship. At the end of the day, I know every input I'm giving is to get a national championship and to personally become the MVP of my team. That's my standard every single day, right? I think in life, it's so gray if you aren't super intentionally figuring out what that finish line is. So we're constantly performing to become rather than, becoming to do exactly what we thought we were going to do. So a challenge I give to like every single person, that I work with that's a former athlete is, what is your new end goal? What is your new national championship trophy? And you have to get as clear and specific as possible, down to the color of the house, the the impact you're making, whatever it might be. I think it's a lot easier to go through those failures when you have that end goal in mind and you build a plan to work backwards from that.
Yeah, set the goalposts, set your new goalposts. I know you said you keep moving the glass ceiling. Do you ever hit those goalposts before you move them? Or is it something where you're like, I'm 10 yards away, it's closer than I want to be because I'm not done achieving yet, let's move it 50 more yards?
I always try to keep the goal what the goal is until I hit it. And I try to reward myself for doing that. So the easiest way I've realized to get myself to, want to accomplish something isn't just writing it on a piece of paper. It's like giving myself an ultimatum. If you do this, you get this reward. If you don't, well, too bad, maybe I have to go do this, right? So I always try to make it super tangible just because it's how my mind works. But yeah, I try to be as specific as possible with my goal in the deadline I have.
And again, that all circles back to discipline, right? If you don't hit it, do you have the discipline to not give yourself that tangible reward? Because it's so easy when you're in charge. Again, I think that's something else we take for granted in sport is we have a coach. We have a team captain. We have someone to keep us accountable that unless you are at the top of your industry, the top of your business, or in charge of what you're doing, you're accountable for yourself. And you need to rely on the skills that you have as an athlete, the discipline you have to show up every single day, to put in the hard work, to eat right, to get your homework. I mean, you do so much. You have discipline as an athlete, whether you think you do or not, that when you don't have someone hounding down on you for it, can you continue to do that? Can you be that for yourself? Is there anything that you're struggling with currently that you think we could learn from that you're not afraid to share?
Great question. I would say the bottleneck that I have in business right now is there's 3 levels to leadership, right? It's self-leadership, leading others, and then it's teaching others how to lead others. I, went from personally producing and leading a small team to, we have an agency of like 60 licensed agents now. So
Wow.
it's a totally different ball game when you're managing that many people. And obviously their goal, or at least the top 20% of them, is to one day be in my position where it's how can I be a broker and truly run my own organization? So my bottleneck right now, I would say, is teaching others how to be incredible leaders, not just leading them, but teaching them how to lead. So that's been really fun for me, though. I wouldn't say I would say it's been hard, but it's probably one of the coolest hard things to work on, because at the end of the day, it's just making other people better, which just goes back to, my personal mission and purpose anyways.
Yeah, what does that look like? How do you teach someone how to lead?
Definitely comes from teaching them that intrinsic motivation and discipline. If somebody can get that down, they've got it. But truly, leadership is always, trying to say this without using the word lead. Leadership is being able to get yourself to do things so consistently that people just look at you and they want to do the same exact thing. That's the easiest way that I think to explain it. So to me, it's really just that personal development. What am I doing? How am I holding that person accountable to their own personal growth standard? So I feel like it's really just teaching them, those basic habits, and then doing a ton of reflection with them. Okay, five people in your team quit. They got mad. Why did that happen? What do you think you could do? So I think, you just have to help them internally reflect better, because they need to be able to reflect in the future without you constantly being there to ask them.
Yeah, doing what you say, not just saying what you're going to do type thing to
For
leadership.
sure.
And again, I guess you can't really take the definition of leadership without using the word lead, so I'll do it as well. Leading
Alright.
by example. It's
Yeah.
very difficult. We could be here for another 40 minutes trying to figure that out. But
Yeah.
I want to know, for me personally, the hardest part of leadership is decision making. And simply sometimes deciding not to make a decision, because that's a decision in itself. I guess your industry is, I'm not going to say niche, but there is things that are specific to it. So if we don't think about those and we just think about decision making from a wide lens, how do you get yourself to make difficult decisions?
To be honest, my mindset has always been act and apologize later. I always think, indecision means nothing's happening. If I decide and it's wrong, at least I learn and I can go back and make the right decision. So I personally just try to act fast. I pray on it. I decide. Now, if it's something super big like transferring schools or leaving one organization and going to the other, that's something I think it's super important to seek out mentorship or people that are ahead of you to make that decision. But yeah, I personally am very big on take action, apologize later.
Yeah, I love the notion of acting fast. And again, I do a lot of listening to my own podcasts, for better or for worse. Sometimes I think I need to stop listening to podcasts and get back to music, but again, discussion for a different day. I was listening to the Mel Robbins podcast, and she had on another podcast host, Stephen Bartlett. He's the Diary of a CEO, I would say owner, host. And he talked about something known as the 51% rule when it comes to decision making. Is this something you're familiar with?
I'm not. No.
I found something. Finally, let's go. No, 51% rule. It's actually new to me. However, I've tried to live by it the past couple of days, and it's worked out. So I'll share with you guys. Steven says that there's two types of decisions, a type A decision and a type B decision. Type A decision would be, like you said, transferring schools, massive life decision. Do I spend $20,000 on a car or on an apartment? They hold a lot of weight. Type B decision is, do I want to put on my socks or brush my teeth first? Obviously, that's oversimplified and then over-exaggerated. We'll reverse that, exaggerated first and then simplified. You get the point. On type A decisions, you need closer to 90 to 100% certainty, right? Because you can never be 100% certain. When you transferred schools, it wasn't like you just woke up and were like, yeah, my gut says go, I'm going to go. What the heck? No, that was I'm assuming, a long, difficult, painful, but at the end of the day, rewarding decision. And if it wasn't, at least you put a lot of thought into it and you did it at the time with what you thought was best. The type B decisions, socks or brushing my teeth, 51% sure. It's probably better to put on my socks because it's cold out today. Okay, put them on. Don't overthink it. In our industry, do I give this person a phone call? It'll take 5 minutes and they might say no. But they could say yes, I'll give them a call. It takes 5 minutes. Or do I spend 6 hours trying to build a website or pay someone $500 to do it? Look at your bank account. If you can afford it in your business, figure out what's worth your time. Go with your 51% gut for some examples. Do you have moments in your life that you're looking back on now thinking, damn, I wish I had the 51% certainty rule here for my my type B decisions. I wish I didn't waste so much time on them.
Yeah, I think that's such a big thing in business in general, especially sales. Every person that steps into sales, the hardest part is making your first dial or doing your first email or whatever that first thing is. And it'll cause you to sit there and procrastinate it. Oh, is it a bad time because this person just got off work? Oh, they just woke up. I can't call them now. Well, now they're eating dinner. I don't want to pull them away from their family. So I think not just for me, but I think anybody in business and sales, those first few, reps of doing the uncomfortable thing and taking that action, that 51% rule is the most applicable thing that you could ever do, right? So I think that's huge in business and sales.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to making the decision with more certainty than not, and then figuring out the rest later for
Yeah.
type B decisions, type A decisions. I do not encourage that at all. It could end tragically. We've all done it though. We've all made what I'm referring to as a type A decision on a whim.
Yep.
Like getting a new golf putter for quite a few $100s. But I digress. Before the final segment, I lied. We have one more question for you. I just thought of it when you brought up sales. Your favorite word, but your least favorite word is no. How do you handle the word no in sales?
I think you just have to know the person is never saying no to you. They don't know you typically. They're just saying no to the fact that it doesn't fit them or what they want, potentially. So when you just take the emotion out of it and you detach yourself from whatever you're doing, no's are so normal. I'll compare it to sports. Like almost every sport you play, like the percentage you have to have and whatever, average you need to be great is typically so low. I can't remember what baseball is or especially golf, but it is incredibly low to become a top 1%er, right? So just detaching from it. And then, also, if you want to learn the art of sales and business, it's how can you approach somebody in a way where you can turn that no into yes. Now, it's a lot easier to turn a maybe into a yes. Typically, a no is just a no, move on. But yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, for baseball, I think it's like 3 out of every 10 swings. If you get a hit, you're
Insane.
above average, which is
Yeah,
stupid. But
right.
that just goes to show you, right? You're going to hear no, you're going to miss more than you're going to hit, but it's when you get those yeses or those maybes, which I'll call a foul ball in baseball, you get
Yep.
another chance.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I really appreciate your time. We could go off on so many different tangents, and maybe we will in an episode in the future. That would be awesome. But I kind of want to transition into the final question that we ask every single guest on the Make Mental podcast. Sam, if you are ready.
I'm ready.
All right. If there is one person in the entire world right now that needs a hug from you, who would you give it to and why?
I would give it to the young athlete, the person I used to be, realistically, the young athlete, from a small town who's super discouraged about, I've put in all this work and it's not paying off. I'm not getting the offers I want, but I know I'm good enough. I would give that person a hug and I would just tell them, like, your life is about to become so great. God's about to take you on such a cool journey. You just have to have undying belief in yourself because your environment doesn't match where you're going yet. So that's who I would give a hug to.
Yeah, beautifully said. I think we're going to end there and leave that as food for thought for our listeners. So we appreciate your time here with us, Sam. If you enjoyed today's episode, I will drop all the information on Sam in the show notes below, where you can find her on Instagram, where you can find her website and the work she does, and anything else she wants to share with us. I will put that in the description below. But again, discipline comes before motivation. Sometimes they go hand in hand, but just obsession, discipline, keeping your expectations in check while still striving for your goals. All wonderful points that Sam has given us today, and really applying that through whatever lens is most applicable for you, whether it's faith, whether it's community, or whether it's self-improvement, or all three combined, because I think that's when the most power is done. But Sam, thank you so much one last time for joining us on the Make Mental podcast.
Thank you for having me.